Welcome, welcome. And of course, this is the section when we do Torah Temimah. We're going through Genesis in order, each Torah Temimah following the other Torah Temimah. And so we're on to chapter 2. Wow. Okay, give me a sec. We'll get the text and I'll be happy to make the bracha. Okay, so hopefully you can see us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. And we are reading in chapter 2, verse 6, excuse me. And this is talking ultimately about the creation of man. And what it's saying is that there were no plants as such. This is a interesting take, a very highly literary take on our significance as human beings and our relationship to our planet, because it's saying that there was no man on earth at that point. And it says here, Adam ein la'avod et adama. There was no human beings to work the ground, right? And so we go into the creation of man, and what happens is we read Ve'ed Ya'ale, a mist would come up from the earth, right, or from the land, and water all the surface of the ground. And the reason is that everything was just dusty, and the water helped the dust particles to cling together, from which God could form man. That's what it says here, that God formed man like a potter forms a vessel from a combination of earth, clay, and water. So, by the way, and of course, just to go over this one more time, and the reason why bread represents human body is because, of course, you take the dust of the flour and you mix it with the water and you form a dough, and you're able to form a loaf of bread from it. And the yeast is also important, by the way. The yeast actually symbolizes, by the way, the Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, which in our tradition is necessary, that we would not procreate if we did not have this evil inclination. So it's not evil in a simple kind of way. It's evil in that the potential for us to act in an evil way is there, but at the same time, it is a vital necessity. At any rate, here we are going back into the creation of the world, or the creation of human beings, and we're reading the passage that says, this is another one. You can see that we've had quite a few Torah Temimahs on this mist going up, right? This one you'll see, we're going to take this word aid, and because it has more than one meaning, normally it means mist, and in the context of the Torah here, it means mist, but we're going to take its other meaning now and see what we can do with it, and whether we can understand the sentence now more metaphorically than literally. So, Tanya, there's an early an early source prior to the year 200. Lama nikra shmo shel anan aid. Why is there a name for a cloud that is this term aid, mist? Mipnei sheshover lemafki'ei she'arim. And the reason is that it is, the word aid can also mean calamity. And that is because it is calamitous. It breaks those who want to raise prices. Mafki'e, the sha'ar, which means a gate, also is understood as the market. And people who try to raise prices, and mafki'e comes from a word, paka, can that also mean to burst. In other words, when the reason it's called an aid calamity is because it is calamitous to those people who want to raise prices. And in case you're not sure how this is working, I believe we're going to clarify it very well for you in a moment through the Torah Temimah's own commentary. So we actually had you can see, let me look. Okay. All right. No, okay. So we're on to Yud Tet. Okay. Here we go. I believe we did this. Maybe we didn't, and if we didn't, because I have my marking here. So let me do this one, and then I'll go back and make sure that we did the previous one. All right. So, Klomar, what this is trying to say is, oops, this is not it. Here we are. So let me look at this and make sure I've got the right one here. Yeah, Yud Tet. Here we are. Let me find it. Here it is. Ki be'eder hamatar, because when rain is absent, ole hamachir, prices go up, right? Because there's no rain, and so there's more of a shortage of food, and we know that when there are shortages, prices go up. But when rain comes, yored hamachir. Now there's a surplus, and so prices go down. Vishover, and in this way, it breaks, right? Those people who want to raise prices. Darish al derech remes, and he says, Torah Temimah says, this is a remes, this is an allusion. It's not the literal meaning of the passage in its current context, but it's seen beyond its context, right? It's understood as a remes, which is a certain type of interpretation beyond midrash. It takes the sentence and the ideas beyond their context, but sees it still applicable. So, remez aid, that this word aid, milashon shever, because it can be understood as a calamity, right? A calamity. The word aid can be understood as calamity. V'hadiyuk, right? And the reason for looking at it this way, midalo kativ umatar yishke. And the reason why is that it's looking at the choice of the Torah as for this word aid and doesn't use a more obvious word, which is umatar, which means rain. It doesn't say, and there was no rain to water the ground. It says aid specifically. And so the thought is, why do they take a less obvious word and use it in this context? And the implication is then that because there are other meanings that the Torah wants to teach us by using this particular word. Okay, let me see. Okay, let me make sure. Sorry, I want to make it just moved, as you could see. Okay. Okay, Vihine, and here, the Yerushalmi, in the Yerushalmi, in other words, in the Talmud Yerushalmi, and let's see what's going on here. Okay, so you see this is the reference. This is the reference to, and this is, because it says Sham, it means Ibid. It means in the same place, right? That's the meaning of Sham, meaning in the same place here. So in other words, he is taking this particular passage from the Yerushalmi in the tractate Tanit, chapter 2, halacha 1, right? And he's saying there, this particular one is in chapter 3, halacha 3. And so he needs to explain something. He feels a need to explain to us something from this source that he's taken. And one of the things that Torah Temimah does is he doesn't just quote verbatim from these sources. He tries to put it in language that will be understood. So, for example, if it's in Aramaic, he'll translate it into Hebrew for us, and because more people understand Hebrew than they do understand Aramaic, and sometimes also, if it's a complicated statement, he'll try to simplify its complication. So this is what he does up here. He not only finds relevant passages to explain the Torah, he also tries to work with those passages to help us have a better sense of what those passages are saying. So this is why he's going into what he's going here. Right. So he says, and here in the Yerushalmi, lo badrasha zo meforeshet. He says this interpretation, right, about the aid it's called aid because it's calamitous to people who like raising prices, right? He says it's not stated explicitly, ach miyeter ha'inyanim, but he says from various other issues, hamit ba'arim sham, which are clarified there, umehamevuar bebereshit rabbah, and stuff that is clarified, in other words, material on this subject that is clarified in another source, the Bereshit Rabbah, Perek Yud Gimel, chapter 13, Uvi Yalkut, another midrash, the Yalkut Shimoni, Uve Shochar Tov, and also this is a midrash on the book of Proverbs. I wish I could remember. It's either Psalms or Proverbs, but I believe it is. It's the book of Proverbs. It's a midrash on the book of Proverbs, Kaf Lamed Hey. This is on Psalm, in other words, 135, right? I believe. Okay, so then I'm going to back up. Shochar Tov is a midrash on the book of Psalms. Please forgive me. I had done my preparation, but done it last week, and I'd forgotten this. So Shochar Tov is on the book of Psalms. So Psalm 135. Near it appears Yerushalmi Nishmat Hama'amar Hazeh, that it looks as if this in the Yerushalmi, this particular statement that we made about being called aid because it's calamitous to the who raise prices, somehow it's been removed, right? It's been removed. Ukvar He'ir Azeh, and a comment has been made about this. In other words, the fact that the text of the Yerushalmi appears to have been altered to remove this specific interpretation. So the person who has made a note about this, Harav Shlomo Buber, the Rabbi Solomon Buber, that is Martin Buber's father, who actually was quite a scholar, and here he is being mentioned. And this is Nercho Yair, means let his lamp illumine. And this is what you put after someone who is alive. In other words, Solomon Buber must have been alive at the time when the Torah Temimah, when Baruch Halevi Epstein was writing his commentary. And so you know that a person who's deceased, we put Zayd Lamed, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be a blessing. But for someone who's a living, we say Nero Yair, may his lamp continue to illumine. Bebi'uro l'shochar tov sham. So Solomon Buber apparently wrote a commentary on the midrash on the book of Psalms there under Psalm 100 and was it 135, right? So he's giving us references if we want. What is interesting, I believe, Solomon Buber's, I don't know, I've never looked at his commentary on the book of Psalms. I know that he is, generally speaking, I've seen some other commentaries he's written, and basically they're very, very, what they are critical editions where he takes other manuscripts and other early printed texts and compares them to his main text and has notes where he notes the distinctions between the various versions of the text. So it's a very high level, generally high level critical, what would be called a critical commentary, because it brings to mind or it brings to our attention variations in the texts as they exist from the various manuscripts, such as in the Vatican. The Vatican has an amazing collection of manuscripts, etc. And it's the Bodleian Library, if I'm not mistaken, and possibly a library at Oxford University. I'm not sure. But there are these amazing libraries of collections of manuscripts and very early printed editions. And scholars have gone over this material and tried to help us read the text that we have. So, and with the variations and point out the variations. And of course, sometimes a variation can affect an interpretation, but it's usually on a very subtle kind of way. So a little bit of introduction to that idea of scholarship. Let's go back now to comment 18. I believe we did not have a chance to do this. Okay, so this is again looking at this word aid, right? Amar Reish Lakish. I'll just go over this quickly. Reish Lakish said, "Ketiv ve'aid ya'ale min haaretz." It says, and this aid went up from the ground. Mikevan she'ala shever milamata, and he's taking this in a different kind of way. He says that because calamity arose from the bottom, meaning from the earth, right? And that's understanding. Miyad hakshamim rodim. At that point, immediately the rains fall. So let's take a look at what he has to say here. So he says, la'asmachta v'remez ba'alma. So he says, for support, he uses this verse for Eid Yaleh. He simply uses it as a support, not as a proof, but as a support and an allusion. Simply, ba'alma, simply as allusion. Hotzi hamila. He has taken this word out of its contextual meaning. Ve'aid, Hamila ve'aid, he's taken out this word ve'aid, quote, quote, mi pshata, from its simple meaning, lohorot, to teach something else. Ki leiridat geshamim, that in order for rain to fall, tzarich rachamim merubim, we require a tremendous amount of love, utfilah, and prayer. In other words, it's an expression of divine love. We need to seek God's mercy and love. Utfilah b'da'aga, and our prayers have to arise with worry, uveshivron lev, and broken-hearted. In other words, when we recognize our imperfections as human beings and realize just how much we depend on rainfall. And of course, Israel, unlike Egypt, which depends on the flooding of the Nile, Israel depends on rainfall. This is actually mentioned in the Torah. And rainfall, as we know in the state of California, is an incredible blessing and, in fact, is the essence of being able to live here. V'darish aid milashon shever, and so he interprets this word aid from a word that to mean catastrophe, kamo, and he gives an example, ve'aid nachon litzal'o, and this is a quote from Job 18, verse 12, which says, and calamity is ready to make him stumble. And see furthermore, lefanenu, ahead, coming up ahead, Barosh Perik Hazinu, at the beginning of the chapter Hazinu, Ba'a Od Drasha Binyan Zeh, there will be another similar kind of interpretation in regarding this matter. Well, without checking that out, does he mean with rainfall? I suspect he does. He's talking about what it takes for rain to fall. So we'll take a little more. So let's go on this. So we're right here now, right? Min haaretz, from the land. This mist came up from the land. Melamed sha'ed hevei gedulo min haaretz. So what this teaches us is that a mist comes up. In other words, mists develop from the land. From the land itself. What does it mean? So we're going to see what's the point here. Okay, let's take a look. Here we go. Klomar, that is to say, mimayim shalmata, that it comes from the water below. In other words, it doesn't come from the heavens. It comes from the water that is on the earth or underneath the earth, from subterranean sources. V'lo mimayim shalmala, and not from the waters in the heavens. Sheshoteh ba'aretz, because what happens is this, as it were, this mist drinks on the land, ve'oleh, and comes up. K'moshe katuv la'el ot yud gimel, as is mentioned above in note 13. So, and that's where it says that there wasn't any, at that point, there was no matar, there was no rain to water the earth. We looked at that verse quickly. Okay. Okay. V'nafkamina. And what's the practical issue going on here? Is there a practical distinction between water that comes up from the earth, from the ground, as opposed to water that comes from the heavens? Mazed Ladina. There is actually a halacha which is affected by the point being made that the aid is something that must come up from the earth. Al pimada kaimalan, and it's based on something that we have as an established halacha, the asur la'asot sukkah midavar she'ein gidulo min haaretz. We are told that when we construct our sukkah for the Feast of Tabernacles, we are forbidden to make that sukkah from anything that doesn't grow in the ground, grow from the ground. So if you want to make your sukkah walls out of corrugated iron, that is not going to work. It doesn't grow from the ground. Ulachad man da'amar, right? And there is an opinion that says, Hayu hasukot sheyashvu bahem Yisrael. Remember this, we dwell in the sukkah as a remembrance of the sukkot that the Israelites dwelt in during their wanderings in the wilderness. Okay, that's one of the reasons why, and it's stated in the Torah, right, Bamidbar, that those Sukkot, that those Israelites dwelt in, Ananei Kavod, were clouds of glory. Some of you know this particular interpretation, that, in other words, what it means is clouds of divine presence, that's the Sukkah that we're talking about. And regarding this, as a remembrance of this, Anu Osim Hayom Sukkot. That's why we construct Sukkot for this festival nowadays. Lachen Yalfinan, and for this reason, we derive this Isur, this prohibition, to make Sukkot out of something that does not grow from the ground, Mikan, from this interpretation. In other words, the fact that the aid, that this mist, has its origins in the ground, we learn that, and because we're saying that these Sukkot were a remembrance that we build today of these clouds, that's why they have to be from the ground. The makshinan, okay, the anane kavod, the anane matar, because what we connect, right? We connect the clouds of glory, the anane matar, to the clouds of rain. They are connected. Ma'anane matar gilulam. So we say that just as the clouds of rain, gedulam, their growth, their development, min haaretz, is from the land, kemavuar, okay, has been explained, because what we understand is that the heat, right? There is moisture on the earth, and what happens is the heat turns that moisture into clouds, which then rise up and become rain clouds. Hacha, here too, in this connection, af ananei kavod haya gedulam min haaretz. So just the same, we say that the ananei, this clouds of glory, their growth was also from the earth. Vayitba'er od inyan zeh, and he says this will be clarified, this whole issue will be clarified further, lefanenu im yirtzeh Hashem, if God willing, Sof Perek Re'eh, at the end of, Parshat Re'eh. Re'eh is in the book of Deuteronomy. So clearly he has gotten through a lot of this material and gone over it several times, because there he has written further elucidation on this particular issue. And that's where we will stop today. And I will take this and I will do this. Hopefully it will work. We'll see. There it did. Just took its time. And we do this here. We'll put this here. So this comes out somewhere. Oh, it just came back right there. So I'll just move it this way. And this is where we will pick it up next time. And I'll also mark this space. And I'm going to stop the share. And we have a minute in which to comment. Any thoughts? Golda, I'm sure you were familiar, and Harlan, nay,
Yeah.
Harry, yes, with the clouds of glory.
They
Heard
dig
it before.
well. I mean, water comes from the ground with wells. You got to dig a well and you get the water.
Yes, but it also comes up through
And
evaporation.
in Israel, I
And
think
it
the water comes from the mountains.
comes from the clouds. But what happens is that the water evaporates from the earth and then forms clouds. Kathleen, were you familiar with this clouds of glory interpretation for the Sukkot, for the tabernacles?
No, I wasn't.
So look, this is
I
why
know
you
I'd
need it.
heard it
There we
before,
go.
but
Yes. But look at this, right? But the point is, I also was familiar with the law that says you cannot build a sukkah out of something that doesn't grow from the ground. That I knew.
so our
Connection
PVC
of the
piped
two.
one was no good all these years.
Technically, yes. Although the pipe, remember, you know, that's a really good question because I also have I think that is not the sukkah itself. The
Right. It's just the top, right?
right. No, 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 no. Again, you can't make a sukkah out of bricks. It isn't just the roof.
Okay.
Okay. The point is that because, for
That's too
example, I
permanent.
have a sukkah which where there are metal bars that form a framework for the sukkah.
Right.
The
That's,
framework,
yes,
okay,
I
they
have one of
must have
those.
had a discussion about this. I'm sure they had a very serious discussion about
Metal
this.
comes from the ground, though.
No, but it doesn't grow from the ground. It says
Yeah, but
Gibulor
yes.
min haaretz, that grows, whose growth is from the ground. So the answer is that the framework, if this is a kosher sukkah with whether it's PVC pipe or whether it's metal, is that it's the frame of the sukkah and it's not the sukkah itself. And that's why the cloths that you hang on the framework, okay, are possible. But then I'm also thinking they are very often a combination of plastic tarps.
Right, like shower
So
curtains or something like that, stuff like that.
yeah.
Yep.
So it must be. I'm going to go back, Golda, and I'm glad I'm recording this. I'm going to go back and say, you must be right. That when he says you cannot make it, except they are talking about the roof.
I
It
think
must be
so, because
just the
that's your
roof. Otherwise,
cloud.
because otherwise, those tarps that you use to then cover the sukkah, they're
Right.
also plastic or whatever. They're not made out of cloth, right? If they were made out of sisal, that would be fine. You know, if they were made of sacking, they would be fine, if that is the necessity. So apparently you are right. I'm going to go back and say
I'm
you are
gonna
right.
I'm gonna say that because if we're talking clouds
Right.
are over our heads.
Yes, that's right.
So
And they
it's not
symbolize
good.
those clouds. Yes,
Right.
exactly right. It's the schach
Yeah,
that has to be made out of it, has to be made
I
out of
think
something
so.
that grows in
Yeah,
the ground.
because it's otherwise we're all in trouble.
Right. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.
All right.